Taurus just loves to act like jealousy isn't even part of their vocabulary. They're too grounded and too above the drama to react to anything, but the second something threatens their sense of stability, their whole attitude changes completely. And it changes fast. And guess what? Yeah, they won't admit it, but Taurus builds their entire emotional world on the assumption that once they choose you, the whole situation is like locked in and nothing, absolutely nothing, can change unless they say so. They take it as a disruption, as an inconvenience, and they also take it as an insult, like all in once. You see, Taurus, when they sense that anything contradicts their idea that loyalty should be 100% fixed, their brain goes straight into irritated belief because they treat emotional consistency like property, their own property, of course. And jealousy hits exactly where they're the most rigid. And yeah, what actually sets them off is the loss of control. Taurus is not the sign that will panic, that will explode. They just, internally tense in that very, very stubborn way, very Taurus way. And you can tell immediately that something is wrong even when they say absolutely nothing. And no, I'm not talking about sadness or fear. I'm actually talking about that irritation that comes from realizing that someone else suddenly has the power to affect their emotional balance. And they absolutely hate that. They hate it even more than jealousy itself. They want to believe that what is theirs stays theirs. And jealousy proves that you're not as predictable as they thought you were. And yeah, what irritates them the most is the loss of control. They want to feel like they're standing on solid ground. So when jealousy shows up, they suddenly realize that the ground isn't solid at all. And they absolutely hate that feeling. They absolutely hate how fast their mind goes into overthinking mode. They'll start going through old conversations, through old plans, old proof that everything was fine because Taurus can't stand the idea that their entire read on the relationship might not be as perfect as they initially believed. They would rather die than admit insecurity. So instead of calling it fear, they call it inconsistency or mixed messages. As if somehow that makes them immune to jealousy. But yeah, it's the same thing. They just want to find a word that sounds less pathetic to them. And they connect jealousy to disrespect right away. And when you think of it, it's actually entitlement mixed with that stubborn Taurus pride that they hide behind the whole I'm calm act. They assume loyalty is obvious, which in a sense it kind of should be. So when they see anything that just looks like a deviation, even if it is not, their brain jumps straight to the idea that you're not valuing them the way they expect to be valued. And yeah, they do keep a scorecard because they definitely do compare your recent behavior to what they think a loyal person should be doing. And the part they'll never say is that they depend on your consistency way more than they want to admit. You see, Taurus is a sign that loves predictability, and they do build their emotional stability off of your predictability. So they act grounded because they expect you to be what? Predictable. And that's exactly why jealousy pisses them off so much. Jealousy actually exposes how much they rely on you to keep their world steady. And no, they will not admit their dependence because they'll start getting irritated that they even need reassurance. They just don't like the feeling of being vulnerable. So what they'll do is they'll convert it into annoyance and judgment. And once their pride gets involved, the whole thing becomes far messier. Taurus just hates feeling replaced. And no, it's not the same thing as with Aries because Taurus is not competitive by nature. The very idea that someone else could be safer, more reliable, or more appealing, it actually insults their entire identity. Because you see, they've invested time, they've invested energy, they've invested patience, and jealousy tells them that their investment might not protect them from emotional predictability. It makes them feel completely stupid for trusting the wrong person, and Taurus cannot stand feeling stupid. So the way they react is by doubling down on their irritation. They will act colder, they will act more distant, and they will definitely act like they're above whatever's happening but at the same time, their mind is doing a completely different thing. It's basically building a case file to justify why they suddenly don't trust you anymore. And the interesting part is that all of this happens behind the scenes. Because Taurus, they don't rant, they stew. They rerun scenarios in their head. They pick apart details. They reply one tiny shift in your tone as if it's some kind of a definitive proof. And no, they will not communicate any of it until they've already decided how they feel, which is exactly why their jealousy always comes with that very heavy, very controlled silence. Because you see, they're trying to regain emotional balance without letting you see how thrown off they actually are. So when people say that Taurus is steady, this is the part that they never mention. The so-called steadiness depends on everything, absolutely everything staying in place. Jealousy exposes just how fragile that steadiness is. And yeah, Taurus hates exposure more than jealousy itself. So the minute the stability cracks, Taurus doesn't flare up. It's just not their style. They clamp down. The clamping down is the warning. Their tone will go flat. Their warmth will definitely drop. And suddenly every interaction feels like you're being measured against a standard they refuse to explain. They will stop giving you their full presence. But yeah, don't be fooled. It's not because they're done with you. They're not. It's because jealousy makes them feel freaking exposed. And the fastest way to hide that is to pull back and act like you're the one being unreasonable. So they'll start responding with that very slow, dry irritation that tells you far more than any accusation ever would. So you'll get short answers, delayed replies, kind of controlled distance that forces you to work harder than usual just to get a normal reaction out of them. And yeah, Taurus actually thinks this looks calm. But no, it doesn't look calm. It looks crazy. And they want you to notice it. And they want you to adjust yourself without them having to say a single word, because they don't want to acknowledge jealousy out loud. Because guess what? Acknowledging it would mean that they're affected, and Taurus just hates sounding affected by absolutely anything. So what happens then is the surveillance. They will start listening too closely to the details you normally get away with. They will take mental snapshots of names, of timelines, phrasings, pauses, like pretty much anything that tells them whether your story is clean or if there is something underneath. And they don't ask questions to understand anything. They will ask questions to confirm what they already suspect. And if your answer doesn't match the script they've built in their head, they'll go cold right away because they take inconsistency as disrespect. They will not push for confrontation. They're not Aries. They will actually make you feel the tension and they will enjoy it. They'll basically communicate and interact like someone who's forcing themselves to stay civil while they're keeping score in the back of their mind. And when you try to fix it, they'll go even more stubborn. So when jealousy actually gets hold of them, they will switch into that stubborn self-protection. And it's so typical of Taurus. They will stop offering reassurance. They will stop accepting reassurance. They will actually want you closer, but they will act like you're intruding. So everything will become this tight, very controlled test of whether you're going to earn their trust back or not. And yeah, through all of this, they will pretend that they're being the reasonable one. Because how Taurus sees themselves is that their jealousy is very composed, very adult, even dignified, because that is exactly how Taurus sees themselves. And in a weird sense, it is kind of true because their behavior doesn't explode outwards. It collapses inwards. So it does look on the surface more adult, right? But the impact of their behavior and their jealousy, especially if it is completely unwarranted, it hits fast. They will just change the entire atmosphere and they will pretend that you should know why. So they will second guess everything. Everything will become very cautious, very slow down. And you will start adjusting your tone. You will start explaining things faster. You will start avoiding actually very, very harmless details because you don't want to upset them. And Taurus reacts like every single small thing matters. So their jealousy will force you into a state of constant self-monitoring. You'll start being careful about how you phrase things, who you mention, what you mention, how you behave, because you will be painfully aware that just one wrong move will restart the entire spiral. So yeah, you will definitely start editing yourself. You will avoid topics. You will do all that just to prevent Taurus from slipping into their crazy judgmental mood that makes everything and everyone tense. And yeah, what probably bothers you the most is that Taurus acts like their reactions are justified simply because they felt something. And now you're the one who has to repair the atmosphere, the tone. You should explain things. You should restore, closeness and all of that, even though it's not your fault. And the crazy part is that Taurus will rarely see this as a burden they're placing on someone else. Because for them, it's completely natural, because they think they're being the adult one and the reasonable one. And what I think is probably the worst part is that Taurus will expect you to read their mind. They don't want to explain what the insecurity even is because they don't want to admit it exists. So you're basically forced to guess. And yeah, everything will turn into this subtle test. So, for example, how fast you notice the change, right? How willing you are to chase. How much effort you will put in repairing whatever hell is going on in Taurus's mind. So you'll end up walking around with a low-level tension because you never know when the next silent judgment is coming. And yeah, all the while, Taurus will definitely think that their jealousy is super controlled, super mature, even dignified. But yeah, it actually isn't. Because you're stuck dealing with the distance, the irritation, the clip tone, the slow responses, everything to earn them back, even and especially if you didn't do anything. And the longer it all goes on, the more you start bracing yourself for the next shift. Now, what happens when Taurus finally feels secure again is that they switch out of their jealousy mode and they will expect you to match that reset. So basically, Taurus feels magically safe again and the relationship should too. And if you still feel tense or confused, God forbid, Taurus will act like it's your issue, not the result of their jealousy and paranoia. Because you know Taurus very well. Taurus will never look dramatic from the outside. They will absolutely change everything, the entire dynamic between you two until they feel safe again. And they will act like that should be absolutely obvious to everyone except themselves. And no matter how controlled they try to appear, jealousy will always show the part of Taurus that they want to hide. But Taurus will keep telling you it's all normal.